How's it going? I didn't know I had a musical number. And you can be very glad that I don't have a musical number. I don't know how many got to watch it live or see. Yeah, we did our Seek First to Understand last night, live cast. It's also available online. I interviewed a young man named Ethan Cagle, who is same-sex attracted and an incredibly committed young Christian man. And I thought it was he shared some amazing stuff. And if you haven't seen it yet, you definitely want to watch it. It'll be up on our YouTube channel sometime today, I believe. And it's already available on my YouTube channel. If you can get to that and just watch it. The sound's a lot better on the churches because I would just use my phone. And so it worked, but, it was not the greatest. So anyway, that was spectacular. Make sure you check that out. I think that'll really educate you a lot on some of the issues going on and help you understand things a lot better as you're dealing with situations in that area. Anyway, we're starting a brand new series today called Shhhh. It's the things we're probably not supposed to talk about or people think we're not supposed to talk about. But, you know us, we're going to talk about them. And we're going to start out the series this week. We're going to talk about hunger and poverty. It's not exactly cheery stuff, right? We come to church supposed to leave encouraged and excited, and it's not really all that encouraging and exciting to talk about people who are struggling to eat. And give you some statistics to help get you excited. It says over 20 million children receive free or reduced price lunch each school day. Less than half of those get breakfast. Only 10% have access to summer meal sites. 1 in 7 people in America are enrolled in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program called SNAP. Nearly half of them are children. On the flip side, we throw away 40% of all the food that we produce every year, which corresponds almost neatly to how much it would take to feed the kids who are hungry. And you may not think North Carolina, because you think you live in a pretty nice little bubble here, when there's a statistic called food insecurity, and that's someone who's living in food insecurity is never sure about a meal. They're not sure about their meals all the time. And the 5th highest state in America in food insecurity is North Carolina. And again, you may be going, yeah, but that's not here. That's somewhere far away here. That's out in the west. That's south. That's somewhere else, because I look around me. One of the things that shocked me when I moved here is, you've always heard that thing, the other side of the track. I've never seen a place with as clear an other side of the track as this area. If you come up from Fayetteville, from Fort Bragg on 87, if you turn right anywhere, if you turn right, just turn right. Make sure you turn right. Don't take a left turn. Take a genuine right turn. Not a right turn turns into a left turn, a right turn. You'll go into an area, what's there? That's where most of you live, right? You live in an area where there are middle class and upper middle class subdivisions, there's golf courses, and then occasionally you'll see a little place where it looks like that little subdivision, little trailer park, might have things a little rougher than your area. If you turn left, you will find the exact opposite. It's like a totally different world. If you've not, just drive over. It's not dangerous. Just drive over there. There are occasional subdivisions. Some of you live in the subdivisions there that are nice middle-class subdivisions that are pockets within Johnsonville. But you are entering a place where things are really, really different. If you go from Highland Elementary to Johnsonville Elementary, the world changes. My wife teaches at Johnsonville. I get to hear the stories. I know what's going on. The percentage of kids, I should have confirmed this with her before I came, but I forgot to do this. But recently, it was the case where every student in Johnsonville was just given free lunch. Because the percentage is still that way. I thought it still was. Everybody, because the percentage of students in there who need it is so high, it's not worth the paperwork to take care of the other kids who want to pay. It's just not worth the paperwork. So they just give free lunch to everybody there. Okay? So when we're talking about hunger, we're talking about something that's right next door to us. And the question becomes, what do you do about it? As a Christian, as a follower of Christ, what is my obligation? What is God's expectation? What am I supposed to do about those people, those kids, those adults? What am I supposed to do about the guys, and I think there's a gal occasionally, who stands at the corner up there asking for money or food or whatever? What am I supposed to do? How do I handle that? Well, being an odd person, my favorite passage on how to deal with people who are in need is not one anybody else in America uses, probably. It's in Leviticus chapter 19. It's in the middle of the law. God's giving the law to everybody, and he sticks these two little verses get stuck in there. And I just love them. I love them to death. Leviticus 19, verses 9 and 10. And verse 9 says, when you harvest the crops of your land, do not harvest the grain along the edges of your fields, and do not pick up what the harvesters drop. What? And let's farm this out. You've planted, let's say barley. We'll plant barley because barley is easy to say. And you've planted a big field of barley, and it comes time to harvest the barley. Now, what do? Now, you've probably got a team of oxen, or maybe one ox, maybe one big horse, probably an ox, and you're going to go through and you're going to cut all of it down, and then you're going to send in some harvesters, some people who are just going to walk around, and harvester's a fancy name for we go pick up the stuff the oxen knocked down. So you're going to send the ox out, and they're going to cut all of it down, and then your harvesters are going out right after them, and they're going to pick it up and put it in sheaves, and you're going to take the sheaves back to your barns. Simple process. Except, you ever tried to steer a team of oxen? Me either. I can't imagine it was easy. I bet they didn't corner that great. And you know, when you mow your yard, you know how it is, you get up because you want to have a good yard, and so you're trying to get up to the fence, right? You're trying to get to the edge, but how easy is that to really get there, right? Because you have to come out later with your weed eater to get the rest of it, right? Okay? And so you got your ox, and you're going through, and you're cutting, and you just can't get to the edge. It's just hard to do. And when you get to the corners, man, how do you 90-degree corner with ox? And what Moses, via God, instructs them to do is don't worry about the edges, don't worry about the corners. Forget about it. Don't even try to get close to the corner, to the edge. Don't try to make sharp curves. Just make your curve. And then don't send anybody out to get the rest of it. Just leave it. And when you're done and your harvesters are done, and you look out over the field and you see, hey, they missed a spot. Hey, they missed a spot. Hey, the ox missed a spot, the harvester missed a spot. He said, leave it. Leave it alone. That's a weird thing to put in a book about religious stuff, isn't it? Here's the religious law. Don't harvest the corners and the edges. And don't miss what. And then he goes on, he says, when you harvest the crops on land, don't harvest the grain along the edges. And then it says, it's the same way with your grape crop. When you go into your vineyard, do not strip every last bunch of grapes from the vines, and do not pick up the grapes that fall to the ground. Leave them. Why? For the poor and the foreigners living among you, I am the Lord your God. Leave them so the poor folk can pick them up. We're going to talk about that a lot later, but I want to lay it out there first. Because there's a basic point. Matter of fact, in Deuteronomy, he even adds to that. He says in Deuteronomy, if you forget a whole sheath of grain, you've bundled it all into a sheath, and you look back and you left. I grew up on a farm where we raised hay. So if you leave a bale, don't worry about it. Just leave it out there. And he also says in Deuteronomy, don't do the olive trees. And the olive trees, you go through olive trees, and I guess apparently you beat an olive tree, and the olives fall, and you pick them up. He says, don't beat them twice. Don't go back again. If you got one shot, leave all the other olives. And the first lesson I want you to see from that, and this, we're going to work from here. It's God cares about what happens to the poor. And he wants us to share that concern. See, that's the first thing that actually happens there is when you're looking at your field, if your natural tendency when you're looking at your field is, how can I turn my field into money? Right? When you go to work, is that what you're thinking? Right? I'm going to take my time, I'm going to convert it to money. And so your natural tendency is to be, and all of us are this way, a little bit selfish. How can I turn my time into money? How can I turn this field into money? He says, even in this little thing, I want you to think about other people. I want you to have in your mind all the time the poor. And what can I do to help them? Just have it as a natural part of your being in your life. Now, notice, I want you to see something that I said very specifically. I did not say God cares about what happens to the poor, and he wants us to do something about it. You ready for an ouch? Because we are very, very good at doing something about problems without actually caring. A lot of times, matter of fact, we do something not because we care, but it's because we don't want to feel guilty. Why do you think the ASPCA, all their commercials, have dogs that look like they're trying to get you to cry at their dog commercial, right? Why? Do they want you to care? They don't care if you care or not. They want you to feel guilty because guilt will produce money. And I'm not trying to be mean to them. If you look, that's what everybody does. Everybody who's trying to get money for a poverty or anything with hurting people or animals is always going to try to make you feel guilty, because guilty will produce money, but it doesn't produce caring. And only caring, you ready? Only caring produces change. It's very easy for us to reach kind of an equilibrium where we're giving enough so we're not feeling guilty and people aren't starving, but nothing's ever actually changing. We just reach an equilibrium point in there. I think there's a lot of things in America which have reached an equilibrium point. Because shouldn't say nobody, very few people actually care. Most of us just do enough to alleviate our guilt. But what the Bible teaches us right there in this little passage in Leviticus about fields is he wants us to live in continual awareness and caring for the needs of others. Proverbs 29:7 puts it this way: the godly care about the rights of the poor, the wicked don't care at all. And I don't like that proverb. Are you with me? I don't like it. Because it puts things in this nice split. Godly care, wicked don't. Where do I fit? I'll let you ponder that for yourself. I have to ponder it for me. Now, let me throw one little piece at it really fast. A lot of times people, I'm going to say like us, but there's a lot of similarity between most of us in the room. We tend to think, those of us who have a little bit, because most of us have a little bit. I don't see many people have a lot. By the way, if you have a lot, I'd like to talk to you after service. But I don't see a lot of people in this room who are concerned about whether or not you're going to eat today. Okay, I could be wrong. If you are, let me know. We'll get you some food. But most of you, it's not an issue of whether you're going to eat today. It's where you're going to eat today, right? Okay, and for us, we have a tendency, because most of us in this room, I'm going to say this too, most of you in this room, most of us in this room are hard workers. We earn what we get. You could probably agree with that. You earn what you get. And we have a tendency to look down on people who are poor because we think, well, I earned mine. And the reality is that while I do work hard, and I do think I earned mine, I had an awfully easy playing field to get here. I mean, some people don't like to talk about privilege and all that stuff, and I don't know what I'm not going to try to convince you anything. I'm going to tell you this, though, and I believe it's very true, that when I play Wolfenstein, the video game, and when I start a new game, at the very beginning, it asks me what level do I want to play at. And the first level is, don't hurt me, and the last level is pure screaming hell or something like that. And it determines how difficult the game is going to be for you. I used to tend toward the medium high. Now I'm like, I just want to get to the game. I'll set it up on a more easy setting. And the reality is, if life was a video game, my life was set on the easy setting like you would not believe. I start out with two college-educated parents who are school teachers, who own land, who come from stable families. My parents are still married, still in love with each other. I was blessed with some gifts and talents that made it so that school was never really an issue for me. School was never going to be a problem for me, both from my parents raising me and from the natural gifts God gave me. I had one of the easiest settings you could possibly have for the game of life. But I regularly hear stories about kids in our area who one parent just died of a drug overdose and the other's in prison. And they may well have been born with some sort of an issue because of the substances their parents were consuming when they were born. And to say that I'm playing the exact same game at the exact same level as that kid is wrong. Okay? Now, do kids succeed out of there? Yes. Do kids fail out of my life? Yes. But my life is on the easiest setting you can get, and some of these people, they start out with, and their life is set on pure screaming hell. And we need to acknowledge that. Tim Keller wraps up some of the ones that are in the Bible. He mentioned each of these is scripturally supported. He says unjust social systems are often the cause of poverty. Examples include unjustly low wages. If you want the scriptures, let me know. Loans with excessive interest. Now listen to this one. A legal system in which the wealthy get far better outcomes than the poor. Anybody not believe that one about our culture? And social prejudice against immigrants or minorities. There are few societies which these conditions have not existed, and there's few societies where poverty doesn't exist. So I want you to start with that concept. God wants us to care. And then I want to take you to one of my other favorite passages. It's in Isaiah chapter 58. In Isaiah 58, I want you to just see a little bit about how God is viewing us when he talks about those who are in need. Isaiah 58, we'll start in verse 1. It's because it starts out, this is an odd passage. You're going to have to follow me on this one. This is going to take you places you're not expecting to go. Shout it aloud, do not hold back. Raise your voice like a trumpet. Declare to my people their rebellion and to the descendants of Jacob their sin. Then everybody is screwed up. I want you to tell them how screwed up they are, okay? For day after day they seek me out. What? You said they're rebelling, but it says in the first thing you say that there's day after day they seek me out. They're eager to know my ways. Time out. Daily they're seeking me out. They're doing their quiet time every day. They're eager to know my ways. They're reading their Bibles. They're probably, the way it sounds, they're probably in a connection group somewhere that's actually reading the Bible and talking about how they can live it in their lives. I didn't misread that, did I? That's what it said. They're eager to seek my ways. They're seeking my presence. It says, as if they're a nation that does what is right. They're pretending like they do what's right and has not forsaken the commands of its gods. They ask me for just decisions and seem eager for God to come near them. God, be with me. Anybody? This is a dynamite. This is your best connection group, right, Vance? Eager to come near them. Then, keep going. Why have we fasted, they say. They're fasting. That's like the hardest discipline. Right? Of all the things we can do to grow closer to God, fasting's the hardest one. And they're doing that one. And they say, and you have not seen it. Why have we humbled ourselves and you not noticed? God, we're doing what we're supposed to do. We're reading our Bibles, we're praying, we're in small groups. We're fasting. For goodness sakes, God, shouldn't you be paying attention? We're good Christians. And then it answers. Yet on the day of your fasting, you do as you please and exploit all your workers. Your fasting ends in quarreling and strife and in striking each other with wicked fists. You cannot fast as you do today and expect your voice to be heard on high. Is this the kind of fast I've chosen? Only a day for people to humble themselves? That sounds good too, doesn't it? Humble yourselves. That's like we push that. Is it only for bowing one's head like a reed and lying in sackcloth and ashes? They're worshiping. Humbly worshiping. They have on their face before God in worship. And he's talking about how terrible this is. What's going on? Next verse. Is that what you call a fast? A day acceptable to the Lord? Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood? Now, did we all get that? What did he just say? This is a dynamite church that ignores the poor and the needy and justice. And God says, I will not accept your fasting. I will not accept your worship. I do not find you acceptable at all. Which leads to a point that is going to freak you out, because these people are religious and uncaring. And that passage says clearly, God is more concerned with our caring than our worship. You take a breath and read that again. God is more concerned with our caring than with our worship. Crazy. It said, you do as you please, you exploit your workers. But the fasting I've chosen is to loose the chains of injustice. So What's God looking for? Micah, another one of my favorite passages. He lays it out real clear. I mean, this is clear stuff. Okay? Micah chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. Starts out with, you missed two verses for that. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow down before the exalted God? How should I worship? How should I worship God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? And remember, for the Old Testament Jew, how did you worship? What was worship? What did it start with? A sacrifice. Okay? In the same way that we come together and we sing, and that's what we call worship, what they called worship was the sacrifice. So he says, you come to me and you worship. Will the Lord be pleased? Now listen to this part. Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams? Now what the heck's that mean? That means I am making a spectacular sacrifice with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of olive oil. Shall I go to 3 consecutive worship concerts in a row and praise God? Okay? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgression? Should I take the offerings up a notch and offer the most valuable thing I have, even though we know it's wrong to offer? Should I offer my firstborn, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? No. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? Here's what he wants instead of all that empty worship. Not saying that worship's always empty. I'm just saying what he wants is you to act justly and to love mercy and walk humbly with your God. You can be the best singing worship person in the world, and if you're not following it up with this, it's empty. It doesn't mean that God doesn't love the worship. It doesn't mean the worship isn't valuable and helpful, but it's neutered if we're not also caring. Did you hear that? Worship is neutered if it's not accompanied by caring. That's pretty good to write that down. I didn't put it in the notes. Wow. And back to that Isaiah 58, he has we hadn't got to verse 10. Verse 10 is just amazing. It says, if you spend yourselves in behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed. I read a commentator who said this about that word, spend yourself. He said, spend yourself on. Literally, grant your soul to. The words could mean give to the needy what you want for yourself. A determined, self-sacrificing commitment. Spend yourself. Pour yourself out for the needy. And again, I am saying ouch with every fiber of my being, okay? This is not Steve lecturing you on you should be like Steve. This is Steve kicking himself in the butt. Hard. Okay, so just understand that part. James in the New Testament has the same thing. Pure and undefiled religion, in other words, religion that matters before God the Father is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself unstained from the world. In other words, care for the hurting and the poor and live in God's standards. So, I want to skip the next couple verses because I want to go straight into, by the way, if you read the Isaiah passage, there's some cool promises that come with doing this, but I want to spend some time talking about, okay, this has been not good, challenging. How do we live this? How do we, as followers of Christ, start to live toward this? And I think, in my way of analyzing it, we go back to that little verse in Leviticus again, and we look at that one more time. You know, the one about, don't cut the edges, don't round the corners. Don't go back and get the grapes you missed. Don't beat the olive tree twice. If you leave a sheath, leave a sheath. A few things that teaches, and I think they're really important to understand, because it gives us 3 things about truly caring for the poor, truly caring for the hurting. And the first one is, truly caring for the poor means providing for their genuine needs. Step 1. The whole hierarchy of needs thing, you can't help somebody who's hungry with much other than food. If they're really, really hungry, there's not much more you can do. Tim Keller again sums up the book of Proverbs. And he says, to be righteous, according to Proverbs, is to know the specific kinds of problems and needs that the people face in your region, as well as their rights, needs, and opportunities. This is far more than, though not less, than collecting food or toys for families at holidays. Now, he's saying that's a really good thing as a start. And I'm going to be really transparent with you guys, because we do an amazing job at that kind of stuff. We really do. Kat, you always lead up some spectacular things, and but those things are meant to be a doorway, not an end product. I feel like, and this is to Steve. You guys can take from it what you want. This is Steve yelling at Steve. It feels to me like sometimes I'm content lobbing fish. You know, you give a person a fish. A lot of times I, Steve, don't even give the person the fish. I kind of lob the fish over to them. I don't think that's what God's saying here. You know, it says you get to know the specific problems that they face. I'm learning a lot because my wife teaches in Johnsonville, so I'm getting an education. But I'm still getting it in a very safe space, very clean space. My hands are still not getting even remotely dirty. So the first thing that harvest situation does is it says there are people that are poor. They need food. Leave some behind. Let them have it. Leave it out there. But there's two more, even more important lessons that are in that little thing to me. And the next one is truly caring for the poor means giving them paths to improvement. See, here's what happens when you do what they were talking about with the grain. Because if you have this field of barley and you make it a point, and everybody in your community makes it a point to do this thing where you don't harvest the corners, where you don't get to the edges, where you just leave some, where you leave if it falls down, you leave it. You don't try to pick it up. Three things happen. If somebody is lazy, see, this works for us with that strong Protestant work ethic. If somebody's lazy, they get to starve. They have the right to make that decision. If they're able-bodied and they don't want to do anything, they have the right not to get any grain. But if somebody actually has the ability and the want to get some food, they go out and get it. They can get enough. They can go out and get enough for their family every day. They can go out and get enough barley to take care of their family, enough of grapes over at the vineyard, enough olives at the olive place, the olive orchard. Matter of fact, in the Bible, there's David. You've heard of King David, right? You've probably David and Goliath. Probably heard of this guy. His great-grandmother made a living for a while doing just that. She was displaced, and she would go out and get enough for her and her mother-in-law just to get them through, to get them by. So the first thing, people who don't work don't get to eat in the system. Now, there's balances there, but that helps us who are the hard workers feel a little better about it. And if you want to take care of your family, you can, but here's the third thing you can do. If you're an achiever, you can get out there every day, first thing in the morning, and you can gather as much grain as you can find. And you can gather as many olives as you can get, and you can gather as much of everything that you can find. Don't have to steal from anybody else. You get what they're leaving for you. You get it there, and then you take it back to the town center, and you sell it. And you start yourself a little business. And you sell enough of it to where you can get a job full-time, or where you can get your own farm that you're sharecropping, or even buy a piece of land and do your own farming. So that little thing, leave the edges, not only did it feed the poor, it gave the poor an opportunity to succeed, to go beyond what they were at and move to another level. And realistically, that's huge. Because really honestly, there are an awful lot of people in our world who don't see any hope that they can do any better. And we, as the body of Christ, as the people who follow Jesus, shouldn't be looking just, and to use the old cliche, we shouldn't just be lobbing them fish. We need to be teaching them how to fish. Showing them how to improve their lives. Those people whose the game setting was not nearly as easy as mine. I can talk. You know, if you can talk, you can get a job anywhere. There's always somebody wanting to hire somebody that can talk. It's called sales, but I can talk. If you don't speak well, limits. It's just crazy. And so, truly caring for the poor means meeting their basic needs. It also means giving a path to improvement. And then this one's hard for me to talk about, but also allows them to maintain their dignity. I'm going to try to read you something, and I do not know if I'll succeed. Beth Moore wrote this. She put it in a series of tweets recently, and it just floored me, and I want you to hear it. And you may have to read it on my blog or something later when I fail completely in my attempt to read this to you. She says, I remembered every detail of it, how the desks were arranged in the room, exactly where I sat and exactly where he sat, exactly how he walked. This was long enough ago that black and white children had not been in the same classrooms all that many years, and it was just before lunch. She was in Arkansas, I believe. Mrs. Jones did what she did every school day right before we went to the cafeteria. Having us all still seated at our desks, she called the kids up front to her desk who received free lunch tokens. There were 3 of them. After the daily observance of them receiving their tokens, we would line up and go to lunch. Only this particular day, I'm sorry. One of the ones lined up at her desk, a little boy, scrawny like me, but deep dark-skinned, announced, I have my money today. I can still see in my mind's eye the way the silver coins looked in his brown palm. He cupped his hand a bit so they wouldn't spill. He stretched out his arm full length for Mrs. Jones to see for herself. Put that away, she said, waving him off. His token was pinched between her stubby thumb and index finger. His brow drew. His eyes narrowed. But I have my money today. Slowly he said it, punctuating the syllables. She was flummoxed. Put it away, loudly. This couldn't have lasted long in reality, but time hung like eternity. Everything slow motion. Still, he held his hand out. Her pinching fingers grew red. He never did put the money in his pocket. She slapped that token on a palm of coins. Memory plays tricks on us. Her slap couldn't have been excessively hard or loud in his small hand without spilling the coins on the floor, but I heard that slap all the way into my organs. It jumped like an electric shock, bolted through me. Line up, and we did like we were told. And she concludes with this statement. There is no graver sin against humanity than the rape and pillage of dignity. Church, our job, one of the things God judges us on is how much we truly care for people who have less. Not how many fish we can lob to faraway countries even. Not how much we can do a fundraiser where we end up praising ourselves. And our church, I've never seen us do that, but it's still possible to raise money and end up making yourselves feel so much better about yourself that you, without even trying, make the other person feel badly. There are ways of giving charity that destroy. We're called to greater. We're called to helping people with the basic needs they have to deal with to live. We're called to do our best to provide them pathways to do better, and we're called to do it all while praising the dignity of this image of God that dwells in every human being. If we're not careful, we can drive through the areas where the people are hurting, and we can look at their houses and look at their cars and say, man, I am doing so much better, and subtext, I am so much better. But there's some reality in that there but for the grace of God go I cliche. What would Steve have turned out like if you put him in some of those situations to start with? I doubt I'd be standing up here. So how do you learn to care? Well, a couple things we've seen. We learn to care by learning the needs, the real, honest-to-goodness needs. That's a reason that if you watch me drive out of here at any point and there are people up there asking for money at the thing, I will never give them anything. Because if I'm not willing to sit down with that person and find out what the needs are that got them to that situation, all I'm doing, in my opinion, is enabling the behavior that got them there. And I'm not willing to, I don't do that. I try not to ever just throw things at problems, although I do. But we do have to continuously face things and look at things and care about things and say, how can we help? What can we do? We have been given an immense stuff. What does God want us to do with it? And one reason we're doing this today is because it is so easy to put everything on autopilot. Anybody else got your givings that you do which are really good that you just got an automatic withdrawal? You've got your Compassion International or your kid that the money comes out every month like clockwork. And beginning of the year, we decided we're going to be more generous, so we put 2 more things on there. We support, I think, the Shriners Hospital, and there's a thing called Kiva, which does microloans to people trying to get ahead. And Kiva realized that they shouldn't make you pick every month who the loan goes to. You can just sit on automatic pilot, so it just automatically gives them the $30 every month. It's a wonderful thing, but they've set on autopilot, so I don't actually have to care. I can just give. And honestly, what's shaking it up is something's happened in our community where there was something on autopilot, and it can't be on autopilot anymore. For years, our church is almost 13 years old, and for years, people say, do you guys have a food pantry? And I say, no, we don't need to, because our community has 5 and 2, and they do such an amazing job, we don't have to. And we'll support them, and we sporadically support them. And we have people who work and volunteer, and we send them money, and we do all kinds of things, and we lob things at them. Some of us do more. But as a church, we lob things at them. And then toward the end of last year, they were getting most of their money from a single source, and that source dried up for them. And suddenly our community, the one of the ways we're actually helping the people in Johnsonville, the poorer people in our community, or even closer here, was there's this food pantry. And now they risk going under. And it's time for us to step up or shut up. Simple as that. You know, we can sit there and, I can get up here and cry and tell you how much we care. I think James says something about saying that you care and not taking care of the person you have the opportunity to take care of. What a load of crap that is. He doesn't use load of crap. That's my translation. And so we're talking about it, and the idea was, you know what? We could take up a collection, and that wouldn't help. I'm serious. A collection would not help because they don't need $1,000 today. They need $1,000 once a month. They need more than that. But we're big. We can start the process in this community. We can have 5 and 2 Sunday here, and here's what I'm challenging you. I'm laying it down. On your app, this goes straight to them. I want you. If you're in this room, you're you. Okay? If it's even remotely possible, I want you to be a partner who sends them $30 a month. My wife and I are going to do that. We're going to start with that. That'll get us connected to them too. That'll mean we're connected. They'll send us stuff. We'll know. Now, they've had to do some major reorganization because of this. There's been a big shakeup on a lot of things. We've got a couple people on the board now, so that you can, if those of you who really, some of you are really cautious about giving and you want accountability. Tim Johnson, one of our elders, is on the board, and he's one of the. You can ask him any questions you want to ask him about it. We've got other people who work there. Nancy's now on the board with her Scarf It Up ministry, so we can hear. We know we'll be able to. So because I know some of you are in that. Can I trust? Yes. That's set up. And here's what we can do. This is what this church can do today. Is we can get enough partners. This is even Barry thinks this is possible. That we can send them $1,000 a month. The money we'll never touch the money. The money doesn't come to us and into them. The money, if you use the app, goes straight into their bank account. $1,000 a month. That doesn't solve their problem, but it hopefully gives them a ray of hope to build. And we're hoping to set this up and do this as a system. We're going to shoot a video and everything, so all the other churches in the area can do the same thing. But it only works if we lead the way. So I need every one of you who thinks they can to use the app, $30 a month. You have questions, they'll have people back at the booths. But I'm going to be really honest with you. You buy 3 T-shirts if you want to. For a ministry that needs a few $1,000s a month, you just bought 3 T-shirts. Do it, encourage, challenge, but don't think that's going to get us there. If you can't do 30, don't do 30. But I think 30 is reasonable for most of you in this room. Matter of fact, for some of you, more is reasonable. 30 is reasonable. And you can step up and you can start doing something. And we can step up and start doing it. And by the way, I don't think this is the end of what we're going to try to do in Johnsonville. I'm feeling really burdened that we've spent 13 years doing next to nothing to solve any of the problems over there. And I came out of a poor area. I've told you this before. The county that I grew up in was the highest per capita welfare recipient county in the state of West Virginia, and the state of West Virginia was the number 1 welfare recipient county in America, was the number 1 state in America. So if you're the number 1 county in the number 1 state, you're in the top 10. And I grew up in the middle of this stuff. My parents we were fine, we did okay, but I was surrounded by poverty. Part of me wonders if God wants to use that training for something significant. I don't know what it looks like. We're discussing it, the elders, the staff, we're trying to figure it out. But we've kind of sat over here out of the war zone for a long time. And I think it might be getting close to time for us not to just give fish, not to just teach people to fish, but to teach people how to own their own pond. So, there you go. A weird invitation. And by the way, as Barry would point out quickly on this one, this is not a real good time for us to be doing this. If you notice how rough it is to get into and out of campus, we need a couple loads of crush and run. Our finances are kind of tight. We're not able to do that right now for our church. But we're not about our driveway. That's not the most important thing in the world. So you guys just put up with the driveway for a while, okay? But we're going to do things that make a difference. I'm not going to talk about them anymore. We're going to do them, and we're going to start here. Now, of course, you're wondering, but Steve, can we get a blue bag today? Yes, you can. If you came to church today saying, wait a second, today's the day I was going to take a blue bag and accept Jesus Christ. This would be a great day to accept Jesus Christ. You know what you're buying into. Okay? So if you want a blue bag, you want to have a relationship with Christ, you want to talk to somebody about that, we have blue bags on the ends of the platform. We have a blue bag back there on the tables. If you grab one of these blue bags, somebody that's trained will take about 10 minutes. They'll walk you through the bag and show you how to have a relationship with Christ. If I said something you want to pray about it or just whatever, there's a crossover for you to pray. There's communion stations in the front and the back. If you want to be baptized, let us know. We love to baptize people. If you want to be part of a church that's crazy enough to talk about stuff like this in a series called Shhhh, our Step 1 class is tonight at 6, Steel Fortress. I'll be teaching that class, showing you how to get connected to this church. Let me close one thing. There is a strong tendency when you hear a message like this to curl up in guilt. Don't do that. Jesus says, and Paul said actually, that there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Anytime God speaks into your heart about something that needs change in your life, it's not to make you feel guilty, it's to make you act on it. So don't curl up in that ball of guilt, which we tend to do. Don't feel guilty. Feel committed. Don't feel bad. Don't leave feeling bad about yourself. Leave determined that from this point on, you're going to live differently.
Please stand with me.